Welcome to the October Sustainability, Housing Efficiency, and Neighborhoods Committee meeting. Thank you all for joining us. We have a packed agenda today, but advancing a lot of long-term city goals, so I think it should be a productive meeting. Councilman Jim Waring is with us by phone.
Good morning.
Glad to have him.
Morning.
We will start the meeting with a call to the public, but I don't have any cards for that item, so we'll move to the meeting minutes for our September meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve, but there are a couple corrections. First, Carlos Bravo, he spells his name Bravo, and then Ryan Bosch is Rian. So if we could get those corrected, I'd move to approve.
Second, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Well, we move the meeting minutes as corrected. We have an exciting consent agenda that would encourage people to review, including moving forward on solar and energy efficiency contracting, which will help us achieve our ambitious sustainability agenda and save some money. So that should be some good news, and hopefully we'll get robust interest in potential partners. And then the Water Services Department is continuing their innovation record on saving us again energy efficiency, and we have a workforce development update as well. Does anyone have any questions about the consent agenda?
Can I ask just one question, or ask staff to make one point?
Absolutely.
I think the total savings, and I'm sorry, I'm on my way, so I can't look at the packet right this second, but was about $3 million a year was the hope, wasn't it, for the solar?
Vice Mayor, whoops, not getting closer. Vice Mayor, Councilman Waring, we have Mark Hartman here today. May I just at the outset say that there's no specific savings identified at this time. This is an effort to get us to a 20 to 25% reduction in energy use, but I'll let Mark answer your question.
Sure.
So currently this city spends $30 million a year on energy use within just our buildings. And so a 20% savings would mean $6 million a year in energy savings is the opportunity. And that energy savings could be used to invest in projects. We currently, our approach is looking at sort of the low-hanging fruit and doing things like lighting replacements and equipment at the time of replacement. But so this would be a more wholesale look at buildings as a system and deep energy retrofits. And we're anticipating the type of projects that this would be approximately about $3 million type projects.
Okay. So if we achieved all of our goals, Madam Chair, it would be $6 million. But what we're hoping to do by going after the obvious stuff is $3 million. Is that kind of how I sum up what you just said?
No. Actually, it would be we don't know what opportunities there would be until we actually do those investment grade audits on our facilities and come up with. In our request for information, we found all of the energy service companies that replied of 11 all thought that 20 to 30% energy savings was a reasonable assessment of what the opportunity might be. But until we actually do those assessments and assign that work over a period of years, any given year, we'll look at what those savings are. So there's no specific amount that we've identified. It was more just to give a sense of scale of what the opportunity is.
Okay. You used the figure 6 and 3 million, so that's what I was basing my comments on. But all right, it could be more, I guess, so that's fine. But the idea is to save money, I guess, is the point.
Yes.
And you would pursue utility rebates, incentives, and other programs to supplement?
Absolutely. Utilities would be a key partner, and they'd actually, in some cases, make opportunities available that we might not do without utility rebates.
Wonderful. Like a good opportunity.
I'm good, thank you.
We have a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Passes 4-0. We are then moving on to our first item as the Shen Committee on Efficiency, the Advance Phoenix update. We want to welcome our Deputy City Manager, Mario, who is the executive sponsor, as well as his citywide lead, and we have outside support as well.
We do. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Along with me here this morning to present on Advanced Phoenix is Melissa Swinhagen, who's an assistant to the fire chief, but a key manager here with the Advanced Phoenix effort. Also with us is a special guest from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, Misael Cabrera, who is the director of that agency, and here to share their experiences with Lean. They're further along in the process improvement methodologies that we're talking about today and kicking off here. And so we thought it would be really good to hear some of the results they've been able to achieve over the last few years. Also up here with me is Joe Giudice, who is a director of our environmental programs office, and he is also a steering committee, an executive steering committee member for Advanced Phoenix, and has really helped connect us with Misael, and has been a very helpful and effective leader in this effort as well. So with that, I will get started with our presentation. So Advanced Phoenix is an initiative that was started and kicked off by City Manager Ed Zerker. And the goal of Advanced Phoenix, in fact, we have multiple goals. It's really about shifting and improving the processes that we have in the city of Phoenix. But it's not only that, it's about maintaining a mindset and a culture in our organization that is focused on the customer, first and foremost, and making sure that customer needs are right at the forefront of everything we do. So at the top level, all the way down to every staff member delivering the service, the customer needs to be at the forefront. And as long as we're thinking about the customer, that helps us achieve a better process. But within that focus are several other goals that help us get there. And that it's about productivity. It's about making sure that we deliver a quality service or quality product. From the smallest tasks to the very big ones. Reducing waste is essential, and it's a key component of the program, consistency and in adding value. So those are all pieces to what we're doing, and there's a lot of fine-grained detail as we get into some of the concepts that we're talking about, like Lean and Six Sigma and Agile. The City of Phoenix, through Advanced Phoenix, is pulling those methodologies, the ones that are useful, particularly for government processes, into the organization and applying those directly. You know, private sector companies have been doing this for years. Motorola and Toyota were prime examples of private companies that really made effective use of these methodologies in their business. But not everything that they did applies to the City of Phoenix. Manufacturing and assembly lines, that kind of work, that's not all necessarily, that's not all part of what we're doing, but there are the principles and the methodologies that we can take that they were using and apply them to Phoenix processes as well, and that's what we're doing. So we're bringing all of those together. Advanced Phoenix is a team initially, but this is about the whole city of Phoenix, and what we're working toward is, again, maintaining a mindset that permeates throughout the organization. But I want to recognize our Advanced Phoenix team, who are about 20 members from various departments citywide, and these are staff that that have volunteered to be part of this team and dedicate their time, their energy, their efforts, in addition to their normal jobs. So this is really them taking their own time and taking this on to be part of this program. And so some of the members of our team are here today. If I could just have you stand up. I think they're all to my right. And if we could just give them a round of applause.
And I understand there are folks who got recruited based on their successful records of getting things done at the city and being involved in innovation. So congratulations.
That's absolutely right. And we have members that are taking their own time to go way beyond and get certifications in Lean and Six Sigma, and their green belts and their black belts, and so they're really advancing and taking this to a further degree. We also have members here from our steering committee, as I mentioned, Joe Dudice and Cindy Stotler. I want to thank for helping us to continue to lead this effort and move it forward. The other folks I want to recognize when we talk about who Advance Phoenix is, you'll recognize the faces in these pictures because these are our department heads. These are our executives on the 12th floor, and all of these folks spent time learning about the lean principles and what we're doing with Advance Phoenix. They spent, in fact, a whole day off-site dedicated to just this. And it's important that we have that leadership support, and we do. We've got very strong leadership support and motivation moving forward as we go. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to talk a little bit more about what exactly is involved with Advance Phoenix and how we're doing this.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you, Vice Mayor, members of the subcommittee. On the next slide, we have an example of 4 different types of improvement that you might see staff taking across the city as Advance Phoenix becomes more pervasive in different departments. The first one on the left, Just Do It. First, I want to point out that there's a special person on that photo. I don't know if everyone knows. That is John Trujillo and Deanna Janovich's nephew, who was in the Olympics and successfully won a silver medal. And that's pretty cool. Just Do It is a type of improvement where an individual such as myself can come in less than 1 day. I see an issue and I can address it myself. It doesn't impact that many people, but I see something and I know I shouldn't let it continue. The second type, Rapid Action, might take myself and a team member or two less than 1 day to make a significant improvement in a process that I manage or that I work with. I just know it shouldn't continue like that. The third, Business Process Improvement, is a little bit longer time frame. It might involve a couple of departments working together, a couple of days, but at the end of that work together, you have some progress, some process has improved for the better. And the last one that I'll go into a little bit more, Kaizen, which is a Japanese word for continual improvement, that is where we are sequestered in a room for a week and nobody leaves until we fix something. And I have a couple of examples of what we're doing citywide and the Kaizens that we have chosen for implementation across the city. So we have 4 that were chosen because of their impact to the city, and also it's always nice if they're a little bit easier to implement. Usually the ones that have a high benefit are not that easy, but we have 4 that were chosen based on both of those criteria. The first one we implemented, we ran this Kaizen a whole week. We were sequestered, talked about strategic sourcing, strategic purchasing. So a lot of really important procurement people from the city, including law department, finance, and people from departments. We were in a room together for 5 days, and we have recommendations that came out of that, and it is for purchasing of commodities over $50,000. So that was a fantastic experience, and it's nice to map out a process so that everyone can see what a long and difficult process sometimes things are in order for us to get our job done right. So that was very beneficial, and we'll have some recommendations coming out of that one. The next one I was a part of last week. Police and fire worked together for public safety records requests. Again, we were in the room for a week. The right people were there, which is always fantastic. We were there because we get a lot of records requests, as you know, in the city of Phoenix. Police alone gets 70,000 requests annually, and one request can include video, audio, a police report, the MCT or the computer in the police car, and other types of information. So we have a large volume, and we have some great recommendations that we'll be working on for that. The next one is of probably great interest to you all, because we are going to be looking at resident inquiries that come into mayor, council, and city manager's office, and how we can do a really good job being consistent with follow-up and all of the work, and making sure that you get the product and the follow-up that you need, and also to the public. The last one, which is more internal but still very exciting to a lot of people across the city, is payroll processing. Anytime there's an exception to payroll, meaning someone doesn't work a regular or normal schedule, there's a piece of paper that has to be filled out. And as you can imagine, with 14,000 employees, that means a lot of pieces of paper on a weekly basis. So we are going to look at that, and hopefully this picture will not be accurate in the future. And I'm going to pass this off to Director Cabrera.
And I'm just going to interrupt for a quick second. Mario kind of stole my thunder because I wanted to introduce Miss Hale, but there is one thing I do want to say. I've had the pleasure of working with Miss Hale for a couple of years now, and I can speak. He's going to tell you about, from his director's perspective, all the great value his organization has seen. But I can tell you from both a customer perspective, because we are a customer of ADEQ, and also from a partner perspective, because we do a lot of partnership with ADEQ, that I have seen great value from the leadership and from the entire team at ADEQ in these principles. And so I'm excited about being a part of the steering committee here in Phoenix and being able to implement these things in our setting.
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate it. It's a privilege to be here this morning sharing with you our experiences. In my heart of hearts, I believe that the work of government is so important and so noble that we should seek to deliver that work with the highest excellence possible. And so it's really an honor to be here talking to you today. Thank you for the opportunity. Our governor in the state of Arizona talks about government at the speed of business. And folks can argue about the scope of government, but nobody argues about wanting efficient government. And that's the promise of efforts like Advance Phoenix. And we've been on a 5-year journey, and with patience and investment in an effort similar to Advance Phoenix, we've accomplished some amazing things. So we've delivered over 250 staff-led projects and had some amazing results. I'll share just a couple of them with you. But before I talk about the mission outcomes, I want to talk about our engagement. Our employee engagement has literally doubled in the time that we've deployed these techniques, because these techniques involve the staff level folks, the folks that know most about the work at finding the waste and eliminating it. And so staff engagement tends to go up when you deploy these kinds of systems. We've seen a 60% reduction in the time it takes to issue our most complex permits. At the same time, we've delivered those same permits for 30 to 40% less cost to customers. We've seen a 40% reduction in the average time it takes us to return facilities back into compliance. So we do inspections, we discover violations and issues of concern, and we've actually reduced the amount of time that it takes facilities to get back into compliance by over 40%. We've completed a record number of remedial investigations, 20 over a 2-year period, and it used to take us 10 years to do the same amount before. And I'm very proud to say that we've doubled the number of underground storage tank sites where we're working, and we did that simply by fixing our procurement process. The one story that I really want to talk about, because it really explains the win-wins that are possible in efforts like Advance Phoenix, is our gas cap program. So in the past, 3 or 4 years ago, if you went in to get a vehicle emissions inspection, you might have failed just because your gas cap was leaking. And in fact, we saw that failures of gas caps accounted for about 1/3 of all failed inspections. And so if you were one of those customers, what happened is that you'd fail, then you'd have to go at some other time to AutoZone, pick up a gas cap, then you'd have to install it and come back, get in line, and then go through your inspection again. And so what we noticed is that this was a high failure and it was something simple. And so we did a cost analysis and said, what is the free retest cost? Because the retest was free. And then we compared that to the cost of the gas cap. And so in the today, if you fail just because of your gas cap, we will provide you with one at no cost. And there's no cost to the state either, because the cost of the free retest was about the same as the cost of the free gas cap. And so we stock 80% of all gas caps necessary for cars. And for folks that have, special cars, we actually will give them a $5 gift certificate to the local store. No cost to the citizen, no cost to the state. And those win-wins are possible through efforts like Advance Phoenix. I also want to talk about the fact that one of the highest forms of flattery is imitation. And so at ADEQ, we have, in addition to Just Do It's and Kaizens and process improvements and other kinds of facts, we also do something called rip off and deploy. So we get a great idea. So that's our R&D, right? Our R&D is rip off and deploy. So we find a great idea from someone else and we just implement it. And I can assure you that Advance Phoenix is headed in the right direction because there's already lots of great examples in the city of this kind of thing. And in fact, we've borrowed 2 of those ideas and implemented them at ADEQ. The first time is the customer service concept of real-time service that's modeled by the Phoenix Plan Review and Permitting Counter Service. So one of the things we noticed is let's make our services available real-time instead of making it very difficult to folks to come in and see us. And so we've taken that concept that the City of Phoenix is already implementing and applied it to real-time administrative reviews of permits and applied that to the gas cap program that we just discussed. The second example is Phoenix's electronic plan review process. When we looked at that, we said, heck, we can make a lot of our permitting decisions real-time and online. And so what we've done is deployed a tool called MyDEQ in order to make permits and compliance real-time and electronic for customers. So I'd like to close in saying that I recommend wholeheartedly that everyone, not just you, but me, our governor, the citizens support efforts like Advance Phoenix because it works. Thank you so much.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you to Director Cabrera for joining us today.
And thank you so much. That concludes our formal presentation. And again, I just want to thank you, Director Cabrera, for coming out and talking about the success that you've had. And again, I just want to thank all the members of our Advance Phoenix team. They really are excited. They love what they do and can't wait to get in and do more of it. I also want to just mention you talked about the engagement of the staff and what happens as we make these improvements and just bring them into this fold. So last week at the Kaizen event that we did, the process improvement that was the week-long sequestering, at the end of that, when staff was able to present their recommendations for improvement, the room just had this energy and feel like it was a Super Bowl party. It was just people were having such a good time talking about what's coming and the improvements that were going to be, and that buzz carried over, and people were still talking about it on Monday morning, and how quickly we can get in there and get these things done. So just want to thank you for the opportunity this morning to talk about what we're doing with Advance Phoenix, and would love to answer any more questions that you have.
Fabulous. Councilwoman
Vice
Starr.
Mayor, thank you. I wanted just to say, I've been through a Kaizen process, and it was Maricopa County, and they stole from ADEQ. So it's good, to rip off and deploy. But one of the important things I think in the Kaizen is that you involve your customers. And one of the processes I was involved with was with the flood control district permitting, in particular for sand and gravel. So ADEQ was there as well as sand and gravel. So as we go through this process, I hope you make sure that we involve customers, because I think that was of great value to hear what the sand and gravel industry had to say. But I think it's a great process. I applaud you guys, but I just hope you remember involve our customers. Thank you.
I just want to thank you for your leadership, Mario, and thank you for coming out, Director, and especially to those that stood up and, stood up in many ways to help move this project forward. It's exciting for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I understand there are already public records employees who got to work this week and had a better job thanks to this. So that's great news. And even little things like gas cap, it's interesting how it can make a huge difference in someone's life. So we were at the City of Phoenix have been looking very hard at our fines and our court system and trying to reduce them so they don't become debilitating. And we had a young woman, a young mother who did not pass her emissions test and then got pulled over, cited for driving without a licensed, a registered vehicle, and ended up losing her vehicle. So these things really can spiral out of control, and it makes such a huge difference in our residents' lives. So it may sound small, but it can really change someone's life, in that case for the worse, but in this case, hopefully, often for the better. So thank you all for your work. We're looking forward to seeing the results of the next few. We next move to agenda item 6, our report on homeless demonstration program opportunity, which has been a real priority of folks on this committee, and welcome our Human Services Director, Mo Gallegos, as well as some of our great partners, Linda Elliott, Executive Director of 1 in 10, and Ann Scott with Human Services at MAG, a collaboration across jurisdictions, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, Vice Mayor Gallego and members of the subcommittee, thank you so much. It's always wonderful to be able to get in front of you and talk about exciting things, and this opportunity for the community to apply for a youth homelessness demonstration project is very, very important and exciting for us. As you mentioned, we have Linda Elliott, the Executive Director of 1 in 10, and Ann Scott, Program Planner for Maricopa Association of Governments. I also wanted to mention, though, that we do have in the audience Paula Atkins, who is the current interim CEO for Tumbleweed, and Jennifer Dangermond, who is a grants manager for Native American Connections, also two very important players. Didi Yazzie Divine sends her regrets for not being here. She was chosen to be in Denver with the Casey Foundation as an expert in Native American culture and services. So we're very proud of that and all of the work that she does. As a city, and I know you as subcommittee members are very supportive of all homeless populations, and certainly youth is a critical and important one. Directly, we as a city participate in the Tumbleweed Safe Place program, and in 2013, our housing department, human services department got together, and we awarded competitive grants for youth homelessness and services and vouchers. And those are with 1 in 10 and Tumbleweed. And while this is a valuable resource and much needed, the Youth Homelessness Demo Grant is a very important part of all that we need to do. The three providers of youth homeless services, Native American Connections, 1 in 10, and Tumbleweed, have been working very closely together to coordinate intake and services. Ms. Elliott will talk more about this in a moment, but I just wanted to address some of the data that they do have already. And in the first 6 months of 2016, we had 192 youth go through the coordinated youth entry system. They were able to divert 32 of those youth. That is so critical, because the most important thing we can do is have an answer that doesn't have people come into a homeless system, quite honestly. But they were also able to house 53 others. So as youth providers become more coordinated, especially in data collection, it brings a lot more clarity to the whole status and the need for homeless youth and youth services. So now I'd like to turn it over to Linda to talk about the status of the system and the homeless youth in our community.
Thank you for having us this morning. As Mr. Gallego said, we've had 192 come through the system, and we weren't able to service over half of them. So it's a problem that continues to grow, and resources continue to dwindle away from us. So I appreciate your looking at this problem and possibly showing us support for this grant. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about how do these youth become homeless. They quite often are kicked out of their home, or they leave voluntarily because of abuse within the home. Once they're on the streets, they are very resourceful. And unfortunately, some of that resourcefulness includes survival sex, and which can lead to HIV infection, drug addiction, and those kind of things. So if they're on the streets for very long, the problem just continues to get worse. The other problem is, unlike many of the adults, they're more hidden. They find places where the adults aren't because they're vulnerable to them, and thus we don't know how many homeless youth we really have here. So that's one part of the problem I think you talked about. Data is important. And again, we're not even servicing half of them now. The collaboration that we formed has been very valuable to all of us and to the youth. We, before, were duplicating services because we didn't talk. We didn't know when a youth would go to Tumbleweed in the morning and they'd get a bus pass and some food and a case manager, then they come to 1 in 10 in the afternoon, we do the same thing. So now we have a database we all share. We refer them back to the original agency if that's the case. And so it's been very helpful to us, and it's more efficient for the youth. They're not going through 2 intakes and all those questions all that time. So again, we're more effective in the way we deal with them, but we still have limited beds in terms of how to approach it. So we're very eager to apply for this grant and devise a plan to end youth homelessness by 2020. So I'm going to turn it over to Ann Scott, who will talk to you about the grant itself.
Thank you, and thank you. Thank you, and thank you, Vice Mayor Gallego and members of the committee. We are, on August 22nd, the Notice of Funding Availability was issued by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The application is to be selected as one of 10 demonstration programs around the country to come up with a youth homelessness demonstration plan, and then associated funding will come with that to provide housing services for homeless youth. 4 of the demonstration sites will be rural, so we're competing nationwide against 6 other urban communities. The anticipated announcement of the award is in early 2017, somewhere around January or February. If awarded, HUD will determine the amount that we can apply for. It's a formula grant based on the youth population that we have, our census numbers, and the incidence of youth, or the poverty rate for youth in our area. We know that about 1/4 of our population will be counted as youth for this formula, and that about 26% of our youth live in poverty. That's higher than the overall poverty rate is is 16.3%, and 22% of our youth live in poverty. So the United Way and the Hickey Family Foundation have provided funding to us to hire a grant writer that will be assisting us in developing the grant. We're required to develop a coordinated community plan. Once a community is chosen, the community is allowed to submit project applications for up to 30% of the total amount. So somewhere between 1 and 15 million will be awarded to the Phoenix area if we are chosen, and this would be for additional youth services. It requires that community develop this plan with a broad array of partners. We've had 2 meetings thus far. The first meeting we had 35 organizations represented. At the second meeting we had 45 organizations represented. This is everybody from juvenile justice, law enforcement, housing providers, youth service providers, school districts, the Department of Child Safety, Phoenix, Mesa, Glendale. We've had enormous interest in this program, including Phoenix Children's Hospital, Circle the City, some of the healthcare providers, and the Arizona Department of Education. We decided to send a survey out to communities, and we had 50 respondents to the survey. Approximately 50% of those respondents were already involved with the Continuum of Care, which is our local planning efforts around homelessness. The exciting thing for us is that 50% were new to us. So we feel that even if we're not chosen as one of the 10 demonstration sites, that we've started a process that is really exciting and will help us to plan better for youth homelessness and to work with partners that we have not worked with before. And our vision is really to have a seamless system of youth services that will look at all aspects of youth and how we treat them. And then it'll go beyond homelessness, but really our focus is on ending youth homelessness and having a process by which we can house those youth. And so with that, I think we'll turn it back to Mr. Gallego and take questions.
Yeah, so that concludes the formal presentation. I'd like to see if you have any questions for us.
I just want to say, this is very exciting. Any way we can support you, we want to support you.
Clearly an enormous need. Those are some staggering statistics about the continued need and also how many folks are coming out of foster care without a good place to land, or how many individuals in our LGBT community do not have a safe place to call home. So I think it sounds like we're very competitive for this, and I certainly would recommend the city do a letter of support for this great effort. So,
Thank you.
The number one priority of any society should be the safety of our children. And your leadership is all about that, especially for our most vulnerable youth. And for those that are in the industry, if you will, Linda, thank you so much for your leadership. We have members. You just showed the slide there. Tumbleweed is another amazing organization. Native American Connections, and I love that I keep calling it an industry, but I'll use that word again, is really showing what can happen when people are communicating, working together. At the end of the day, it's about serving that child, that person, that youth, and of course, the city of Phoenix stepping up and being a strong partner as well. So this is a true partnership. I think this is what it looks like when you put your best foot forward on a competitive process that will help our youth, and I agree. I'm totally supportive of it, and thank you for your leadership.
wonderful. Thank you so much. The majority of the cards we have for public comment are actually for item number 10, which is our apprenticeship item. Would it be okay with my colleagues if we take that one out of order? Apologies, did we have? Okay, Rita just ducked, and I was like, if our presenter has ducked out, then I will not do that to folks. But could we do item 10 out of order and welcome Rita Hamilton and her team? As soon as I said that, I couldn't see her and was wondering if I had done a injustice to folks. This is an exciting one about growing apprenticeships in our community.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. We're very pleased to be here this morning to talk to you about an important collaboration between the Community and Economic Development Department and the Phoenix Public Library to create an initiative called Build Your Future, which is designed to grow training, apprenticeships, and employment in the construction industry. With me is Judy Reno, the College Depot Director at Phoenix Public Library, which assists youth and adults to connect to educational opportunities, and Rob Stenson, Supervisor of the Business and Workforce Development Center in the Community and Economic Development Department. I'm going to turn it right over to Judy, so thank you.
Good morning. I would like to start by explaining the need for this initiative. And so just to kind of set the tone, I wanted to explain really kind of the demographics facing some of our youth. We just heard a great presentation about some of our homeless youth. And I think on that same note, we have 1 in 7 students, young people between the ages of 16 and 24 in the country who are currently not working or in school. And Phoenix, unfortunately, is leading the pack with 1 in 5 being what's been called a disconnected youth. And so I think that this is really, you know, a huge thing that we try and work on a daily basis in College Depot. And one of the things that we've seen as we see, you know, people come through our doors, walking through, you know, so many people that fit this demographic come to the library for support, come to use the computers. They walk through College Depot on the second floor and talk about options. And a lot of times what we're seeing is people who want to fast track to a career. They're not interested in or able at this point in their lives to be able to invest 2 or 4 years in earning an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. And so what we often do is help connect them with faster options, looking at certificate programs. And we think that there's a whole world of other things that we could focus more on and open up more opportunities, such as training programs and apprenticeship programs. And accordingly, there's a huge need in a lot of industries that they don't have the skilled workforce that they need. And so we see this as a really great opportunity to tie the two needs in our community together. According to Construction Dive Trade magazine, the most commonly mentioned trend in 2016 is that there is a skilled worker shortage in the construction industry. And then when you couple that with statistics from the U.S. Department of Labor, they are predicting overall employment growth of 13.6%, which is almost 520,000 new jobs by the year 2024 in jobs such as for plumbers, electricians, carpenters, painters, construction managers, various jobs in the construction field. And because we have so many new buildings that need to be built and buildings that need to be updated as well. And so that really helped lead to this concept of Build Your Future, which would create a process to reduce the employment shortfall in the construction sector, and then also provide an opportunity for more people who are currently out of work and not in school to be able to find a great career that they can launch into. And so what we would like to do is increase information to youth and adults through College Depot and also through job centers to really increase this pathway. One thing that we thought we could do is we have a very highly trafficked information wall that we would like to dedicate a portion of that wall to, and use our social media, which we're very active in. And then I would say most importantly, train our teams, our various teams that work with young people and adults as well, to increase their knowledge about these post-secondary pathways, such as training and apprenticeship programs, the various certifications that would indeed lend themselves to high-demand careers, so that we can help not only the individuals and their families, but also the economy.
So in short, the process is a three-pronged approach. The process is collaborate, inform, and connect. So when it comes to the collaboration, that is a collaboration between the Community Economic Development Department and the College Depot at the Phoenix Library, Public Library. To inform, we're looking at informing youth and adults about the skilled workforce shortages, and increase the pipeline into a high growth and high demand area of construction science. The connection really comes into play with youth and adults who are currently not working. We're connecting them to post-secondary education options, as we've discussed, in training, apprenticeship, and certification or certificate type programs. Over the next 120 days, the next steps include a definition of the high demand positions that are based on local business needs. What do our local City of Phoenix organizations need? What positions are in high demand? And what can we do in order to meet those demands? To that end, we have begun surveying existing registered apprenticeship programs offered by both union and non-union organizations to identify what those programs currently look like, the length of time, the costs, et cetera. Second, we'll look at internal training for both the College Depot and Arizona at Work staff and partners. to be trained on what training apprenticeships and employment options are within the construction industry. Really, this is about, if you're hearing over and over, it's about the marketing and promotion of what the pre-apprenticeships are, what the apprenticeship programs are, what the on-the-job learning process is, and what mentorship opportunities are for individuals who may not already know how to go about getting employed in this high-demand industry. I will turn it back to Rita.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, so we're here to request your approval of creating this initiative called Build Your Future to explore ways to increase training, apprenticeship, and employment opportunities for the community.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think I failed to introduce Rob Stenson, our workforce development supervisor, so apologies for that. Also Judy, but she did a lovely introduction, so thank you. And thank you to our city librarian, Rita Hamilton, as well for this partnership. So this is something we've heard from apprenticeship programs in industry, that there's more opportunity, and our federal partners, particularly through the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, have challenged the city to get more involved with apprenticeships. But there are a lot of people who have been doing this work long before we started it at the City of Phoenix, and we want to obviously get their expertise as we do it. If folks are interested in helping us do this right, be additive and not duplicative, how can they be involved?
I believe we're looking at hosting a time in November for all folks who have a registered apprenticeship program to get together to identify what the core issues are. We hear over and over again from a variety of industries, how are we helping with employment brand? Employment brand is a huge obstacle for a lot of industries, particularly when it comes to construction, where we've had kind of this fall hibernation type process. And now it's springtime, there's new growth, economic boom. How do we get the word out in conjunction with the industry here in Phoenix? And that will be the key role that the library and economic development and workforce development play, is getting that education component out to the workforce.
Wonderful. And the timing is perfect. Yesterday, the City Council started working on significant construction expansion at the airport, and I think we will have other projects going forward. And it'll be good to also look at whether we have some great success stories out of existing projects. I understand we had a significant number of apprentices working at Sky Harbor right now on Terminal 3. So we always also should celebrate what is working as well. Councilwoman Starks.
Thank you. I'm very excited about this initiative. As you know, I'm really supportive of it because I come from the real estate industry, and it's critical that we have skilled workforce. It really is, I think, a secret weapon to economic development. So I think it's very important. But I really appreciate what the library is going to do, because we're here to help kids graduating from high school to show that there are alternatives. Not everyone can go to college, but there's a lot of great jobs out there that really bring value to our city. And so I really am very excited about this program. Thank you so much.
We have several cards on this item, so go ahead and take the cards unless colleagues want to make comments. Jackson Mole.
Good morning, Madam Chair, council members. My name is Jackson Mall. I'm the Vice President of Municipal Affairs for the Home Builders Association of Central Arizona. I'm here today to express our appreciation to the city for undertaking this effort. The presentation that was done in the attached staff report does not in any way understate the extent of the labor shortage in the construction industry. In fact, between the president of the association and myself, we probably spend 85% of our time now on workforce development. It's the #1 issue by far for the association. So we understand that there's not going to be a silver bullet solution to this problem. And so we're happy to get any help that we can get, particularly from the city. So to that end, the association stands prepared to assist the city in any way possible, whether that's provide contacts with our employers that have paid training programs, educational contacts with some of the JTEDs and CTE programs that we've been involved with, or even expressing our opinions on some of the preferred curriculum and training programs and that sort of thing. We're happy to do any and all of that. So again, I just want to express our appreciation to the city for undertaking this effort, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Maybe for folks who are interested in jobs, where should they go now? Or do you have any commercials for?
Sure, Vice Mayor Gallego, that's a great question. On our association website, we have a job posting page where all of our employers can post all of their job openings, or just contact the association, either Connie Wilhelm or myself. We are happy to help any individual at any time find a job in their preferred field. Even if you don't have any experience, we have a number of employers that offer paid training programs and so forth. So thank you very much for that question.
Thank you. Sean Hutchinson.
Morning, Vice Mayor, members of the council, staff. Thank you all for taking upon this this initiative. My name's Sean Hutchinson. I'm the training director for the Phoenix Electrical Apprenticeship. We've been registered apprenticeship with the state of Arizona since July of 1943, and we've been continually registered as such. We train apprentices in electrical construction. Currently, our enrollment is about 243 apprentices currently learning the trade. And as the training director, I'm also a product of the apprenticeship training. That encompasses my formal education is serving an apprenticeship. I'm here today to kind of talk a little bit about what apprenticeship is and what you should look for as an apprenticeship program. You know, we've been doing this a long time, and the model of apprenticeship training really hasn't changed much over the course of time. It encompasses, for the most part, a 10-to-1 ratio of on-the-job training versus formal classroom training. Our program in particular is a 4-year program. 8,000 hours of on-the-job training is what minimum requirement for the graduates of our program, in addition to serving 900 hours of classroom training at our training facility. All of this training and all of this program is privately funded within the private industry. This is not a burden to the taxpayers, and it serves the industry overall in providing a qualified workforce for well into the future. What we find challenging, and well, obviously many challenges, one of them being recruitment, which I'm so happy to see the City of Phoenix taking an active role in recruiting new apprentice applicants, because unfortunately, in the world of post-secondary education, apprenticeship programs typically take a backseat, if you will, to the formal colleges. This is the alternate college. This is an alternate 4-year college that is college accredited through the Maricopa County Workforce, Maricopa County Community College District. The apprentices need job opportunities more than funding to the programs or funding to programs that support programs, if you will. The programs themselves need job opportunities to place apprentices with. And when it comes to helping apprenticeships do a better job at what we do, it's making sure that in the construction industry in particular, the companies that employ apprentices and are a part of a registered, structured, and disciplined apprenticeship program are getting the opportunities at construction contracts. Because if we don't have a place to put apprentices that are in our program to go to work and complete the program and become a qualified workforce, we're going to die without those opportunities. And we need to do collectively a better job at making sure that construction companies, right on down through the subcontractor level, are getting the opportunities to perform work on construction projects and be able to train those apprentices to learn these trades and to be a success in the industry. So going forward, and I'd be more than happy to help out in any way possible from our position with the apprenticeship program, I'd be more than happy to help out in making sure that we reach those goals and we're able to get more and more apprentices opportunities to learn a trade, because there is a shortage of qualified workforce, and that goes for all of the trades, all of the building trades. We all operate apprenticeships. We've all been around a very long time. We know how to do this. We know how to get people trained. We just need the opportunities to employ those apprentices, and that's what we need help with. So if there's anything I could do to help, please let me know, and we can work together on that.
And if I want to join an apprenticeship program tomorrow, can I visit your website as well?
We have a website, Phoenix Electrical Apprenticeship. Best thing to do, because I'm just an electrical apprenticeship, there is 109 apprenticeable occupations that have apprenticeship programs, not just in construction, but in all fields. The best thing you could do is to go on Google and search apprenticeship, and then put whatever it is, the career choice that you choose, and look at the apprenticeships. Look at them. Look at what they offer. Look at how long they've been doing it, and check out the structure of those programs is so important. Our program in particular provides the job opportunities to the apprentices. We place them into appropriate employment based on their training needs, so that when they graduate a program like ours, they're getting a well-rounded education on all facets of the trade in the electrical industry, not just a specialized area. So look for what the programs do on behalf of their apprentices, and make sure that those apprenticeship programs have a history on, within the community.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you for willing to partner with us. We got to get this right.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Anthony Carley.
Good morning. I won't rehash a lot of what Sean said because I would probably make the same speech there. So I just want to come on record on behalf of the Arizona Building and Construction Trades Council as thanking you all for taking on this initiative, the city and council. This is obviously something that is of the utmost importance. So I just want to offer us, the council, the Building Trades Council, as a resource for anybody moving forward. We are looking forward to having our voice heard at that November meeting. This all sounds great, and I just want to offer us as a resource moving forward. You could, if anybody, I know you're going to ask the question, Vice Mayor.
Unpredictable.
azbuildingtrades.org. It's got a list of all of the trades that are involved in our council, and they all have apprenticeship programs as well. So thank you again, and looking forward to working with you all on this.
Wonderful, thank you. We are lucky to have many partners who are willing to help us get this right. Any questions from my colleagues or statements?
And I really appreciate this. Again, Rita, and of course our city staff, our team. But what a great place to help convene this at our libraries. Again, our libraries continue to evolve with the times, and this is absolutely a form of formal education. And we're in a really exciting time for the city of Phoenix. All three public universities have a campus in downtown. We have Galvanize that will be opening here in the next few months, which is unconventional engineer education. These apprenticeship programs are incredibly important. It's about getting people to work. Not every kid grows up to want to create the next great app. Although we want to help those kids too, right? Absolutely. But there are a lot of kids out there that are just great with their hands. And, excuse me, a lot of our not just kids, but our adults, they're just great with their hands, and that's what they do, and that's what they do to help contribute to build this great city. Yesterday, we did have a very exciting vote. Let me back up. First, it's good for that individual. It's about, being employable and being valued as someone who helps drive our economy forward. So that's one. Second, it's good for the city of Phoenix. We did just pass a very exciting vote yesterday where we are essentially doubling the capital improvement project budget for aviation. It's going to about $2 billion in the next few years. We want to extend the SkyTrain. We have some terminal work being done, and someone has to do those jobs. And it's really, really important that the people doing those jobs are highly qualified individuals, that they're good employees, they're skilled employees, they're safe employees, and the conversation of apprenticeship programs should come into play. And so bringing everyone together for the common good of helping the people of our community get the highest level of training possible to help do those jobs, that's good for all of us. It's important for all of us. So again, thank you for the leadership and for all of those who stepped up and who are willing to be part of this process. We cannot do it without your help. I'm speaking to all three speakers and everyone else who is out there. Thank you for the partnership. Thank you for the commitment and for the leadership. Absolutely supportive here.
Wonderful. I just had the chance to visit Youth Build, which is one of our partnership program at the Maricopa Skills Center, and there was a young man who had not been working, not in school, and he was able to get his GED through the program, is now working full-time, and he wants to become an engineer and go to college. So it is neat to see what can happen with training, and so happy to see people find a passion and a career that they love. Certainly, as Councilman Valenzuela said, we need lots of options for our young people, and this should be a great one. With that, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes. Wonderful. Well, thank you all for your hard
Very
work
much.
on this. Good luck. We'll look forward to hearing updates and have a great meeting in November.
Thank you.
And now we will move back to our regularly scheduled item number 7, which is some more good news for us today, award of federal home funds and community development block grant funding. And we'll welcome our housing director, Cindy Stotler, and our neighborhood services director, Chris Hallett.
Good morning, Vice Mayor, members of the subcommittee. I'm excited to be here today to talk about awarding home and community development block grant, or CDBG funds, to 5 very worthy projects to put forth by nonprofit organizations serving special needs populations. It is unusual for us to come with a second call for interest results and award in 1 year, but we had to do that because our first call for interest back in the fall did not result in any qualifying projects for our community development block grant, mostly from nonprofit organizations. And we were very disappointed in that because we'd like to further our mission, providing affordable housing for a special needs population. So I asked for a second chance from Director Chris Hallett over here from Neighborhood Services to spend that money in the way that we need to further our affordable housing needs. So we did a special call for interest this summer with your approval, and we targeted nonprofit organizations that we knew were in need of funding, and our outreach was successful. We got 13 proposals and awarded the following 5 projects. So the first project is by Catholic Charities Community Services. It's the Manna House. Manna stands for Marines, Army, Navy, and Air Force. So as you can guess, it houses veterans as their special population. It's a complete gut and rehab of an industrial building located by I-17. And they're going to have 50 beds of transitional housing for veterans. The next project is also Catholic Charities serving St. Francis of Assisi, private housing serving low-income and disabled seniors. This is a 11-unit project, very old building, and so they are doing major rehab of all systems, updating to current building codes, including appliances, kitchen cabinets, bathroom fixtures, flooring insulation, and new doors and windows. The next project is Cofelt Lamoureux Apartment Homes. This is the Maricopa County Public Housing redevelopment of 301 units of permanent supportive housing, 301 units of public housing that also includes permanent supportive housing for persons with developmental disabilities. We already have funds invested in this project, but their environmental review came up with additional rehab needs that they came forward with, so we're funding an additional $350,000 for this project. The next project is Labor's Community Service Agency, rehabilitation of scattered sites, $350,000 for that. 28 units total of transitional supportive housing for homeless and or persons with disabilities. This includes all kinds of minor rehab work to these older buildings, including roofs, energy efficient doors, windows, AC units, appliances, and landscaping. There we go. Sorry. The last project is Southwest Behavioral Health Services. This is 2 group homes, so rehab, including energy-efficient doors, windows, AC, ductwork, kitchen appliances, and cabinets, on 2 group homes that house persons living with HIV and AIDS. So those 5 awards, we are asking for approval today to loan and disperse federal home and community development block grant funds for a total of $2.1 million. In addition to that, as I requested from Chris, my second chance, we're asking to reprogram CDBG funds in the amount of $957,000 to allow these awards to occur.
Wonderful, thank you. This advances many of our city priorities all at once. We're moving forward on affordable housing, but also continuing our support of veterans, our support of a wide variety of communities. We're already moving on our fast track cities, one could argue, which we just started yesterday, and trying to help provide more resources for people living with HIV and AIDS. So, and I think this is also exciting in that at our last council meeting, we heard from at least one member of the community that we needed to be more geographically distributed in our investments in housing, and we have almost every council district in the city represented by today's investments. So it is a shame that citizen did not come here today to see us doing exactly what he'd hoped. Council colleagues, any comments, questions?
I'm ready to make a motion.
All right.
I agree. This is incredibly exciting. Thank you so much to our congratulations, but obviously it comes with a lot of responsibility, and I know you'll do very, very well. And I'm really excited to make the motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Wonderful news. So about $2 million in new investments in housing. And I think we then move on to a very complimentary item, Affordable Housing Development Loan Program Call for Interest. And Cindy Stotler will be joined by Angela Duncan, our Deputy Housing Director.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, members of the subcommittee. So this is our annual call for interest that we do every fall. And as we do every fall, we look at our processes and our priorities, and we look for revisions and updates that we can do in keeping with the requests of the affordable development community and making sure that we're all continuing to build sustainable housing. So today we are coming to you to ask for approval of our community priorities with an update to our community priorities, our process and timeline for the call for interest this year, and also updates and revisions to our underwriting guidelines. So just to recap, last year's call for interest resulted in very successful 3 projects that went on to receive awards for low-income housing tax credits. And those projects are Camelback Point, Native American Connections is housing special needs population of homeless individuals. Rosewood Court is the second one. Catholic Charities Community Services is housing persons with disabilities in that project. And then El Caro Senior Residences, also Gardner Capital, I always want to call them Gateway, I apologize. Gardner Capital Development housing senior residences there. So we leveraged $2.6 million in home funds to have 191 units of affordable housing for special needs population funded in the low-income housing tax credit round. So we're very excited about that. Those all should be under construction in 2017. So our community priorities, these are how we prioritize the proposals that come in for funding for our home and CDBG funds. We look for acquisition, rehabilitation, or new construction for homeless or special needs populations. And for a long time, our special needs populations have included veterans, disabled, frail elderly, victims of domestic abuse, chronic substance abuse victims, and also victims of domestic violence. So what we're asking for this year is an update to that to add victims of human trafficking. That has not been specifically called out, and it has come to our attention that that is a need in the community, so we'd like to add that to our community priorities. The next priority we have is developers qualifying as a community housing development organization, or as we call them, CHODOs. These are nonprofits. They have to be a nonprofit organization with low-income folks on their board. We have several of those communities in the Phoenix area. We also prioritize the rehabilitation of existing nonprofit-owned affordable housing. As you could see in the last call for interest, that was what we funded mostly with community development block grant funds. And then we also prioritize down payment and closing cost assistance for low and moderate income families at 80% of area median income, which is generally $50,000 for a family of 4. So you can see that they would need assistance and down payment assistance and mortgage and closing cost assistance at that kind of level of income. So those are our community priorities. I do want to point out that our community priorities have been very successful every year in achieving funding and low-income housing tax projects we have a grand opening almost every year of our assisted projects. This year we had 2 grand openings, Cedar Crossing by Native American Connections, 74 units with a special population serving chronic substance abuse persons. And then also Victory Place, phase 4 opened this year, 96 units of permanent supportive housing for the homeless, or formerly homeless and disabled military veterans. So we have been very successful with our special populations that are in our community priorities, and we're looking forward to bringing projects that serve victims of human trafficking in the future, as adding that as a priority. Our call for interest this year, our funding allocation is $3.7 million in home funding. $650,000 of that must be awarded to the community housing development organizations. That's a federal requirement. And then an additional $325,000 in community development block grant funding. Our timeline is always with the low-income housing tax credit process in mind, so we try to get our timeline going so that the folks who win our funding can have a letter of support to take into the low-income housing tax credit process, and that gives them more points on their qualifications, and it gets us more affordable housing in the city of Phoenix. So we're proposing to release our call for interest in November, and then results or proposals will be due in January 2017, and we would come back to this subcommittee with award recommendations in February of 2017. And the last thing we want to ask for is some revisions to our underwriting guidelines. The underwriting guidelines are the rules that you have to live by when you receive one of our loans. And we are always talking to our customers and the affordable housing community on how to improve our underwriting guidelines to make sure that we are not preventing anyone from requesting loans from us, or also make sure that their affordable housing communities remain sustainable in the future, because that's to all of our benefit. So we have a number of revisions that we're asking for on our underwriting guidelines, and I'm going to turn it over to Angela to explain those revisions.
Good morning, thank you. So quickly, I'll present our proposed revisions. As we presented earlier this year to the subcommittee, we are looking to move our city rent thresholds, our city rent maximums, to align with HUD's rent limits, which currently HUD's rent limits are higher than the city's. So what this will do, this will allow our affordable housing property owners to increase their rents to help sustain operations into the future, as well as still comply with HUD's requirements. The other two bubbles on that slide really apply to nonprofit developers who are bringing minor rehab projects to us, typically $350,000 or less in requests for our funding. So we're looking to move to modify our property standards to allow those nonprofit developers to just focus on the greatest rehab needs at their property, rather than having to make major investments to bring all systems to HUD standards. We are also looking at lesser affordability periods for those minor rehab projects on a sliding scale. That's typically, again, for projects that are coming in for $350,000 or less of our monies. Finally, we are aligning all of our loan maximums to $2 million. So this allows for an increase in the loan maximum overall for special needs projects, which currently is $1.5 million. It will allow those projects to go to $2 million in their requests.
So with that, we are asking approval for our affordable housing loan programs community priorities, with the addition this year of victims of human trafficking as a special needs population. Our call for interest for home and CDBG competitive funding round, the timeline and process, and then also the revisions as we just described to the underwriting guidelines for our loans.
Wonderful. Thank you for talking to the community and making sure our programs work for our partners. It's also, since we are the committee that works on human trafficking, it's exciting to see us moving forward in this area. We, in our 2 short months, have made significant, between this program and community development block grants, there are significant new resources available to address that community challenge. And as we've seen in police reports just this week, it continues to be a challenge for our community. So thank you for your leadership in that area. Do we have any council member comments?
Just as always, good work, Cindy. You're a good leader.
Yeah, strong work. I'm ready to make a motion on this too as well. This is exciting. All of these, the next one is exciting as well. Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. And our grand finale item is city-owned property disposition. We'll welcome Jamie Spear, Assistant Real Estate Administrator.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. I will turn it over to Jamie, whose job it is every day to pour over the details of these properties as offered up by departments. This morning we have 11 properties that Jamie will walk through and give you some brief insight. And if you have further questions, we can certainly follow up with those. And then ultimately we obviously seek your recommendation to move forward to council and seek authorization to get these on the market, to have our broker Jones Lang LaSalle obtain the most revenue possible for the city related to the sale of these properties. Jamie?
Thank you.
So the first property is 1328 to 1346 East McDowell.
The site is roughly 113,716 square feet. There is a building on the property, well, two separate buildings, roughly 13,000 square feet. The property was leased and under an operating agreement, but has been vacated, so we have been requested to list that. Our second property, 7115 North 19th Avenue, is roughly a 7,814 square foot vacant commercial site. This is a remnant property left over from Northwest Extension of Light Rail. 6702 North 19th Avenue is approximately 25,446 square feet. It's also a commercial site and is also a light rail remnant from Northwest Extension. 405 North 79th Avenue is approximately 10 acres. This is a vacant portion of a larger site. It's the West Valley Transit Maintenance Facility, which Public Transit has deemed they no longer need. So this sale or the disposal is pending FTA authorization. 1801 East Weldon and 1805 East Weldon are remnants from State Route 51. They're roughly 8,300 square feet combined residential sites. There will be stipulations that the current zoning will be maintained, which is residential. 1735 East Glen Rosa is also a State Route 51 remnant. It's 13,400 square feet residential site. We will also have a contingency that the zoning must be maintained. 614 West Van Buren is roughly 5,900 square feet. This property is just a vacant site. We did work with CED in evaluating the site to determine the best means of disposal, and they recommended listing it on the market. 1112 East Rozier is 307,534 square feet vacant residential site. It's a property that is determined to be a remnant and no longer needed. 3150 East Baseline Road is 4,000 square feet residential vacant site. This is a remnant of a project at 32nd Street, and it's no longer needed. It's a small site, but we do have interest in purchasing the site, so it needs to be surveyed so we can maintain our public improvements. 18th Street and Indian School Road is a 2,500 square foot vacant site. It's a remnant from State Route 51, and we have also had interest in that site as the site adjacent to that is listed on the open market. So, are there any questions?
I think it's exciting that we're moving forward and disposing of these assets, and that revenue for the city, as well as we have a goal of reducing vacant land, so that is exciting. We've had other great movement forward on vacant land in the last month as well. The city is going to be hiring a person near the airport to help with our vacant land, and a full-time economic developer to, now that we've done community planning, to get the community's vision into action. And I think next month we may be moving forward in Garfield with some of our vacant land and redevelopment as well. So we've been busy, probably the most economic development so far. I think we just got a report on the bioscience campus, and that's vacant land now generating $65 million a year and jobs that make significantly more than average income. So we've been busy, and I think more work to be done. So thank you for your work in this area. A motion or council member comments?
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
We have no additional cards from the public, so with that, we'll move on to any council member requests for future agenda items. And if there are none, we will adjourn. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.